Welcome to spring. I assume everybody has their beets planted. St. Patty's Day, we're supposed to have that done. Tonight, we have a very interesting talk on one of the oldest houses in town. And we'll get to that in a minute, but right now, Les asked me if there's anybody here that has nothing to do on a Saturday or something like that. We'd like to get a work party going when spring gets here and clean up the Stanley Downs Memorial Building. So if you are available, give Les a call at 1964. 1964. Okay, don't forget the food in the back. We're through. Not now. And we'll let Bob Ritten, our town historian extraordinaire, introduce our speaker.
Well, I want to thank you for coming out. Can you hear me in back?
No. Yep.
Tough luck. Glad you're coming out on such a wintry night. I'm supposed to be spring tomorrow morning, and I'll believe it when I see it. This is the 30th in our series of talks on Bethany history. And back when we were around 3 or 4, a local person said, gee, those talks are really great, but aren't you just about out of topics? And the answer is no. Tonight, we're going to have the life and times of Joel Andrews. I'll go into that in a minute. But just as a preview of things to come, our fall talk for 2004, talk number 31, will be Daryl Christensen, our senior resident state trooper, and he'll be talking on the history of Troop I in Bethany. In the spring of 2005, Erwin Stewart is going to be talking on the history of Bethany Wood, Bethany's first subdivision. Fall of 2005, Bethany and its Hills. It was a book that was written in 1905. It's the 100th anniversary. What's happened in the last century. We also have Steve Grant, who's an expert on the old Leatherman, who used to walk through Bethany on his rounds. Is going to be the speaker after that. So we got a lot of stuff coming up. I do have an opening for the fall of 2006. Somebody would like to fill that in. You know, I'm kind of insecure if I'm not booked up ahead. But tonight, we're having a treat. We have Steve Massey, resident of Brooks Road since 1995. He moved into a very old house because he loves very old houses. And over the years, we've talked about his learning more about his house, which was a good way for me to trick him into doing research and preparing a talk so that he could share his newfound expertise with you tonight. And why don't we do that? Okay. You have a... How's that? I can't hear you.
Hello? Hello?
There.
All right. Testing. Where's Bob? Not the lady. Okay. Yeah, I'll try. You know, I can always count on some of my friends for help. I am completely nervous. I've never done anything like this before. I've had a lot of advice. One said, well, picture everyone as a cabbage. Quite like that. Some else said, picture everyone nude. Then he also said, well, how about imagining a bunch of friends? So I think I'll try that, see what happens. Anyway, I hope I don't bore anybody to death. I hope I can go through this and not have a mass exodus that will lead me. I don't quite know where the button is to make the slides work. Oh, here it is.
You might want to move that up just a little bit more, a little closer.
How's that? What's technology? That works. Yeah, I think we should do this.
They don't want to hear me.
I don't think it's on.
It's on now.
All right. I'm going to just have to start loud. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, let's go.
Move the whole rig closer to the crowd.
You want me to do that?
You're not.
Let's have that make it. Right, the talk is something that I couldn't have done without the help of Bob Brinton and his son Will. They've done a great help. It's really been a nice thing for me to have all their expertise behind me, all the information they have in the historical side. I really want to thank you for that. The talk tonight is not going to be only about Joel Landers, but it's going to be about the people that lived in the house and the house itself. Oh my God. I think I have the wrong slide. That's not Well, if you don't know, that's our Sir Bob Brinton, our town historian. Who's been a good help to me. As I understand, he's who was that you were mimicking?
Roger Sherman.
Okay, I should have.
What town are you sitting in there?
An unnamed town to the south.
Okay, as I said, this story tonight is not going to only be on Joe Anders himself, but various things that happened in the house and some of the families that lived there. I don't want to read much tonight, but I really do have to read some of this. I know it's going to be hard for everybody to tolerate that and read it. But, this is an inscription that was given to me by the Costins, who I bought the house from. It says, in colonial times, Caleb Andrews came to this valley from Hamden and built this house of hewn timbers. Until 1931, his descendants lived and tilled the soil. Thomas H. Brooks, master joiner, and great-grandson of Andrews added to the structure. Artist George Drury painted scenes of the house, which became Currier and Ives prints. Restored in 1962 by William A. Young, and owner of E.F. Trowbridge Carpenter, in about the 200th year of this old house. This is looking down at the valley. That's Bethany Gap, that you see right there. And a barn that I don't know if anyone knows whose barn that is, I'd appreciate it. But,
It's mine, Steve.
okay. It could be. It could be, Jen. Do you think it's your barn?
It is the old,
All right.
the old barn.
There we have it.
There
It's
when
your
I was
barn.
growing up.
Okay.
Not a copy of that.
No? So the saying said he came to the valley from Hamden, and this is the valley. He used hand-hewn timbers to build the structure. This is a photograph I just recently took, so it's still part of the structure. You see this support, it's a tree, it isn't even milled. Same with this photograph. This is what the cellar looks like today still. Field stone, third floor. Nothing's changed since the house was built in 1776.
that's looking west in the cellar, and obviously there was an entryway to get in at street level to the house when it was first built. I don't know much, I can't find any history on when it was like that, but some people speculate that maybe the farmers would let the animals come in the winter time, and it would keep them warm and also keep the house warm. That's looking at the house in an easterly direction with the ridge in the background. Now this is a census from 1790, the very first U.S. census that was ever done. And Caleb Andrews' name shows it right here. It's interesting if you can read what it says. It says 3 white males of 16 years and upward, including heads of families. I can't read these very well, so I'm going to 3 white males under 16, 3 white females, including heads of household, all other free people, and slaves. And if you look here, apparently Abigail Darling had 4 slaves in 1790.
That's in Woodbridge.
This is the first grand list that we have for Bethany, 1784. It's the first one for Bethany because prior to that, Bethany was part of Woodbridge and Amity, Amity Parish, right? That's what it was called. The currency is pounds, it's not U.S. dollars. Most of these all read the same, but he had 2 oxen, 2 cows. He had a total of 47 acres. They categorized it depending on what type of land. And he had 1 house rented. Perhaps that's where the house was that he had rented. That's a cellar hole not too far from the property. I don't know if that's true, but say it. This is a 1798 grand list. The difference here is that he had a total of 90 acres, and he had the animals. But also, back then, they taxed the property based on the number of fireplaces the property had. You read here, it says 2 smokes, spelled S-M-O-A-K-S. You got taxed for that. He had horses, taxed on the horses, oxen, cows, Joel Andrews. We were going to talk about Joel Andrews, of course. He wrote an autobiography. It was the only one that we're aware of in Bethany at that time. He was born on January 30th, 1777, and died November 19th, 1865, at age 88, 9 months, and 20 days. I have to read this, I'm sorry, but I'm going to read it anyway. The following is a sketch of my life containing an account of narrow escapes and heavy trials, also of my experience of religion and other important events in my life. Published at their request for my children and friends who wish to know something of my enjoyment and progress in divine life. It is my design first to write down what I can recollect of the past from my birth to present time, and in the form of a diary give an account of the principal events from time to time, correctly dating them as they may occur. September 5th, 1831, Joel Andrews. I was born in Bethany, state of Connecticut, January 30th, 1777. I was brought up by my father's family and continued there until I was in my 24th year. Among the many accounts which have occurred to me accidents which have occurred to me during my life, I will mention the following. When I was about 3 years old, I fell and hit my head, which injured me very much and almost killed me. And when I was in my 5th year, I had my elbow put out of joint by being pushed through a door at school by one of the scholars. I was about 9 years old. I fell on the ice, which cut a hole in my head and came very near killing me. And the next summer, being thrown from a horse, I was badly hurt. Thrown from a horse. When I was about 18, no, I don't. When I was about 18, Dan Robinson and myself were digging after a woodchuck on the side of a ledge of rocks, when on a sudden the rocks from above gave way and came down upon us. They buried my comrade so that there was no particle of him or his clothes to be seen. I should think there was more than a ton's weight on him. I was so engaged in trying to save his life that I was not sensible of any injury to myself, although I was knocked down. I finally succeeded in getting some stones on him so that I could get a hold of him and pull him out. He fainted as soon as I got him out, but I got him home. He was badly hurt. Ice and brown. Another time, I fell from a house and cut a hole in my head and laid one shoulder. Twice my collarbone and jaw cracked. I've been wounded 17 times by edge tools. Okay, I was supposed to read that. You can tell I've never done this before. I once fell from top of the barn head first, struck my head on a pile of shingles, which gave away saved my life. July 16th, I went into a well to get a bucket, which had fallen in. I secured it, and it was drawn to the top by someone from outside. When by some means it gave way and fell 12 feet, and the first thing it hit was my head. The well being 36 feet deep, had I been at the bottom at the time, the consequences would have been certain and instant death. Joel kept a record of the weather from 1800 to 1864, right up until the year before he died. He didn't have a thermometer, so he would describe the weather in words. Oftentimes you'd see the expression chiefly clear, clear and sharp cold. This is what the journal looked like. He keeps 2 months on each page and each day of the month in a column, and he'd just write a few words about what the weather was like that particular day. Another thing he did at the end of April every year, he reported how much snow had fallen in the previous year. So in this particular one, it says the winter passed 2 feet and 5 inches of snow. Another thing he did as a young boy, actually started doing this when he was 8 years old. He'd record the day that he saw apple blossoms on the trees the first time. I show this because it's a picture of a textbook from the time, and it explains a little bit about why he wrote the way he did, perhaps. And if you read the first part, it says, Adam's flaw we thinned off. thy life to mend this book of pen. The cat doth play, and after fled. I put this in because it says, this being wrote wrong end up, mistake. When he was doing his journal, he apparently, on March of 1800, wrote it upside down. He's apologizing for it. It was all bound together. The book was bound together, so we couldn't just rip it out. I guess. I apologize for it. March 1800. (1816). This was an unusual year. This year passed, uncommon cold. Spring was remarkable cold. Had middling good crop of rye, middling good crop of oats. Hay is the poorest that ever mown. Hay is fetching $1.50 per hundred in New Haven. Farmers had to sell their cattle at very low prices because they couldn't winter the animals. September 21st, a frost which killed the corn dead and everything that the frost could kill. They mentioned seeing a black spot on the sun this particular year, and we know now that it was an eruption of Timbora, a volcano in Indonesia. Here's 1845. He says, shall no longer keep records day by day unless the weather is uncommon.
Who taught him to write?
Hello?
I wonder who taught him to write.
Oh, it's a little different. June 29th, 1858. Between 11 and 12 at night, there were 3 earthquakes, one after the other. The first was so great that it shook the house and broke glass in the windows. So in 1858, there was an earthquake in Bethany. He'd also write particular events. One of his entries in the journal was, a good day for sleighing. That's my neighbor Linda Francois and her horse Butte. It's a nice snowy day. This is Arthur Doolittle and his wife Louise, with the ridge in the background. This is the very first grand list we have where Joel Andrews shows up as owner. He's got a total of 14 acres, and he's got 11 sheep shorn. The reason I mention that is because they gave tax credits back then for sheep, so a lot of the Bethany farmers had sheep. That could be him in his young days. I worked in the fields. Sheep capturing the typical rural scene in Bethany. Oxen that he had. This is the brook across from the house. And this is a well that was dug by hand and lined with fieldstone rocks. I'm sure they used it to get water to feed the animals because the barn was located just not far from here at all. This is the entryway to where the barn used to be. You can see the cedar posts here and here. It's not a very good photograph, but the barn is still right over in this area. Same with the barn foundation is here. You're looking west from Brooks Road. Again, it's not a very good photograph. But you can see how large the tree has grown up since the barn was gone, right in the middle where it was. 1832, Bethany was incorporated. This is an actual property boundary line between Woodbridge and Bethany on Downs Road on the causeway. If you look right here, it's inscribed 1832. You can still see that today. This is a grand list of Joel Andrews. I can't even read the years. Now he's got 82 acres of land. 1825. All right. He's got a clock. He doesn't have any yearlings, heifers. He doesn't have any other animals except 34 cows, I guess. No sheep. Got the cows, though. Ridge in the background. Clock. This is a story that was written by Joel Andrews about a girl named Miss Emily Cooper who was killed by a man named Henry Foote. I'll just read a couple of lines from here. It says, "The dreadful case I now relate is poor Emily's fate. He cut her throat, sad to relate. Oh, how dare Foote commit that sin because he had been drinking gin." This is the First Church of Christ Congregational Church on Amity Road, Bethany. It served as a common meeting place for town people and a source of education. The Episcopal Church, which is across the street, he was a member of the Episcopal Church. He was also a Presbyterian and later became a Methodist, which we'll talk about later. This is a map from 1868. The house that we're talking about is right there. You can see it's right on the corner of Hamden, is the boundary here, and Woodbridge is right here. So it's a very far eastern section of town. Woods. That's the some of the road scenes in the neighborhood that are pretty different perhaps than they were back in Joel's time. The Methodist Church. What happened was in 1830, a group of Episcopalians that weren't happy decided to form a Methodist Church. So this was a painting that was done of the Methodist Church that was built. And it was located right here on Litchfield Turnpike. You can see the what's now the Holy Reservoir and Dam. Again, the house is right there. Joel, all by himself, raised $926.84 to have the Methodist Church built. It actually was enough to build a church, $926.84. The donations ranged from $150 to 50 cents. And they built the church in 1840. You can see the cemetery in the background. Who knows what this is? Here, Watson. I guess it's really called a foot stove. So everybody was right. Apparently, the parishioners would fill this with hot coals from their wood stoves or fireplaces, whatever they were using, and bring it on their wagons to church and keep their feet warm for the service. Another photograph of the church. This is what's left of the church today. Two front steps. Cemeteries in the back of it. Apparently there's a story that the roof was badly in disrepair. The church didn't have any money, but Clifford Whitlock offered the church to put a roof on it, they'd let him store his books there. But they wouldn't let him do that, so they ended up tearing the building down, and this is what we have today. This could be Joel's wife. I don't know that, but it could be. You can see the barn in the background. You would only see the foundations of it so far. Hey, if anybody wants to stand up and stretch or move around or get out of here if you're totally bored. Nice legs to this up. This is an article written January 18, 1990, by Barry Collins, published in the New Haven Register. It tells a great story. She did a wonderful job about Joel, his wife, and his wife, of course, for 46 years. She died December 1st, 1846, at 71 years old. But Barry really did a great summary of his life. I compliment you, Barry. That was great. March 5th, 1847. This has been a good day for me, but in the evening, a heavy trial came upon me on account of strong drink. Oh, the trouble I see made by strong drink in my house. My disease is chiefly caused by sorrow and grief, which came upon me by an enemy, and too much strong drink by one of my family. February 28, 1848. Moved to Prospect to live with Cheryl Brooks. I had spent 71 years at the homestead. I could not live with them, where there was much grog used by my son-in-law. Here he talks about walking all over. Apparently, he obviously didn't have cars. He walked wherever he went. And this is a story he was talking about walking from Wolcottville, April 11, 1848, returning from Norfolk. He says, "Through the woods alone, I composed the following lines. I am walking through this lonely wood. I put my trust in God for health and strength to keep me on." You'll not well. This is Bethany, B-A-T-H-A-N-Y. Darby and Bogda. I am traveling from day to day. Sometimes I don't know the way. The Lord shows me where to go. This is Ferry Cemetery. He's always talking about how bad he is. This day I'm 72 years old. Of course, he lived to be 77. I am able to labor some and feel happy and thank God. When this flesh and heart shall fail, the mortal life shall cease. I shall expect within the veil the joy of life and peace. She lived to be 88 years old. This is his son, Ziba Stone, who passed away in 1850 at the age of 43. It's right next to Joel in his Ferry Cemetery also. It's his house in the day. The Brooks family. This is my favorite picture. I like to think of it as my ancestors, perhaps, standing there. But people might recognize this as the photograph that's in Alice Bunton's Book of Old Houses. And this is the Brooks family. I believe that's T.H. Brooks. House is pretty rough looking. That was taken in 1906. But I like it. In the Historical Society, we found a family record by the Brooks family. I'm not going to read it all, except Arintha Andrews, who obviously was related to Caleb and Joel Andrews, was married to Cheryl Brooks. They continued to farm it as their predecessors had, farming being their primary source of income, if not only source. Waywagging the ridge in the background, Bethany Gap. The Civil War. The Brooks family had 4 sons. All 4 went to the Civil War. I find that unusual. I mean, in a little town like this, Bethany, Connecticut, at that time, to have all 4 sons go off to the war, they probably never left the state of Connecticut in their life. They all went to the war. 2 were killed, 1 was wounded, and 1 survived and came back okay. Robert was killed October 10th, 1863. Cheryl was killed December 14th, 1862. And Thomas was wounded in the Battle of Gettysburg, July 3rd, 1863. John's the only one that came home. In the Historical Society, we have a Bible that belongs to Thomas Brooks. It's a pocket-sized Bible, and I like to think that perhaps it went with him to the war, and maybe even was with him when he was wounded at the Battle of Gettysburg. In the back, there's an inscription. It says, to Thomas H. Brooks, from his friend E.N. Bindle. Biddle, sorry, thank you. It's hard to read. We also have a Connecticut Minuteman medal that was given to Thomas. On the back, inscribed is this: 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Volunteer Regiment, who enlisted in U.S. service in response to President Lincoln's first call for troops in defense of Washington, April 1861. As mentioned earlier, Thomas Brooks was a builder. He built this house, which is the Davidson house. It's at Davidson Corner, which is Old Litchfield Turnpike and Carrington Road. He also built the Jerome Downs house on Litchfield Turnpike. Sperry Cemetery again. Robert Brooks is buried at Sperry Cemetery. As mentioned, he died October 1863 at the age of 24. This is the Methodist Cemetery. It's where the Brooks family is. That's their stone. I don't know if you can make out, it does say Brooks there. But Thomas H. Brooks is buried there. His wife Hannah. Children are Anna. She died at age 3 and 8 months. Everett, who was only 4 months old and 13 days. Cheryl Brooks, he's one of the soldiers that died. His gravestone is here in the Methodist Cemetery. I don't know why his brother's at Sperry, but there's a different cemetery. This is a list of the owners published in the book that Alex Quentin wrote, Old Houses and Community Buildings, published in 1972. The Brooks family, that we've been talking about, owned the property from 1865 to 1917, for a total of 52 years. This is the land records Clarence Mendel, who owned the property from 1937 to 1952. He had 43 acres of land. He also farmed the property. Oh, the previous slide, there's no livestock mentioned, so I guess they stopped taxing livestock. But he did farm, he was a farmer. In 1937, that would have represented 161 years of continual farming by the owners of the property. This is a map when we owned the property. It shows the barn that we've been talking about across the street. Plus, this was all fenced-in land, and it's now part of the Regional Water Authority. That's the foundation of the barn looking west. I'm sorry, looking east from it. Brook across the street, and here's the barn. Henry Riley. This is 1920. However, I guess they had extra things in 1980. And Henry Riley He had 43 acres of land also. He's also a farmer. He had a car long ago. This could also tie into a talk, the last talk that was given by Bob Brinton, Bethany, Lore, Legend, and Lies, because Henry A. Riley died in the house February 25th, 1934. He was the grandfather of Arnold Riley, who was June Riley's wife, our first selectman's administrative assistant. Henry A. and his son Henry F., who was Arnold's father, did teaming with horses. The story goes that Henry A. fell through the snow when they were cutting wood, and he hurt himself. I guess he had a hernia. They got him home okay, but there was a massive snowstorm that came in, and they couldn't get him out for medical care. 1 or 2 days went by, and he died. The undertaker couldn't get in Brooks Road, and they couldn't get him out. After some time went by, they were able to with the help, Henry F., who was 25 years old at the time, with the help of Ralph Downs, put his father on a wood sled and hauled him out to Litchfield Turnpike, where they met the undertaker. They still had it. This is an end of an era. This is the first picture I have of the time when the family owned it, but didn't farm the property for their personal livelihood. This is going back to 1955. It was owned by Clifford Whitlock at the time. This is an advertisement that I found by Clifford Whitlock, who's trying to sell it. This is a real Currier and Ives dream house, circa 1800. Picturesque surroundings for sale with 10 acres of land, 5 miles from Manhattan, Connecticut, near the New York Parkway. Hunting, fishing, hiking within a few minutes. Drive to the cultural advantages of Yale University, and usually less than an hour to Yonkers. Very few such farms have been offered in recent years. The map has the house and property, but it doesn't show the barn that's across the street. This is a recent photograph looking up towards the ridge, and I just assumed that this stump must have been here as a tree through a lot of the people we just talked about. This is a photograph from the 60s when Winthrop and Celeste Young owned the property. They restored the house in 1962. They owned it from 55 to 69. They added the dormer here. They made this living space, it was a shed. They added a barn and 2 other outbuildings that you can't see in this photograph. This is a photograph when John and Joan Costin owned the property. They owned it from 69 to 1995 when I bought it. This is 1995, the first year I lived there. Same year. This is the inside of my family room where I took this photograph because it shows the original chestnut floors that go back to 1776 when the house was built. This is looking down from the east side of the property. You can see the horse stall and the other animal shed there. I suppose that could have been a couple hundred years ago too. We have deer running across the property all the time. Brooks Road looking north. By the way, Brooks Road was recently designated as a scenic road. Harry and Steve Collins had a lot to do with that. This is an old mill site, the SM Peck cider mill site on Downs Road. The rest of these photographs, I would like to refer to as the quiet corner of the town. Lake Watrous with the ridge in the background. Another shot from a different angle. Same thing. See Bethany Gap. Causeway. This is Brooks Road looking south, right at the intersection of Sanford Road. And the Causeway. Yeah. Thank you for your patience. This is it.
That was a great job. Didn't you do a great job? Are you ready to do the next one?
This is it.
Wasn't that bad, was it?
Well, they didn't get booed yet.
You didn't drop your card.
No, you promised me I would. I told them I wrote everything on 3x5 star. He said, that's okay until you drop them on the floor.
I always like to be supportive.
Oh, you were? What else should I say? What other encouragement?
Anyway, thanks for coming. There are, up here, there is a copy of the weather book and also a copy of his autobiography, if you'd like to peruse them. And a few other things related to the property. And of course, there are refreshments in the back of the room. Thanks for coming.